it's incredible to be back here. It's an incredibly humbling experience, actually. But if I'm extremely honest, I don't think I was incredibly stimulated by a lot of the courses that I took while I was in this college. Except I remember one in particular that motivated me to get out of bed in the morning, most of the time. Sociology with Professor Sam. He's unlikely to remember me. I wasn't particularly expressive or interactive, but he did have a way of engrossing me in thought, which was something that was missing in all my other classes. So I remember one lecture in particular that he delivered, in which he discussed an anthropological concept called liminality. In it, it basically describes a theory in which one experiences ambiguity in the stage of middle rituals or at the crossing of thresholds. More recently, it was widened to include political and cultural change. As per its description, during liminal periods of all kinds, social hierarchies may be reversed or temporarily dissolved. The continuity of tradition may become uncertain, and future outcomes may be thrown into doubt. Why did this become relevant to us today? Even 5 years ago, I felt that this term fit our generation so well, my generation of the Indian youth, and I'm sure many young members of the audience might agree with me. And secondly, this is one of the only points in my educational history where I remember being encouraged to think critically. I reflected further, I did research independently, and I was questioning things. That is what thinking critically is all about.
So the Indian youth lives in extremely liminal times at the moment. This can be exciting and terrifying at the same time. But the most recent youth survey states the latter. The Yuva Nagarik Youth Survey polled over 10,000 students in 11 capital cities, which included 6 metro cities and 5 non-metro cities, including 757 social science teachers, leading to some disturbing results. Here are some of them. So 65% of the youth wanted a ban imposed on individuals of opposite sex belonging from different religions meeting in public spaces. 75% of them unaware that the legislature is responsible for enacting laws in the country. And 61% do not correctly understand the meaning of the fundamental right to equality. 44% admitted that dowry was prevalent in their communities and they should accept it. 63% of them feel afraid to express their ideas and opinions in school. And 65% of them do get beaten in school for various reasons.
This clearly proves that our systems are not really working. Basic legislature, this basic civic awareness doesn't exist in our schools. And we're not encouraging our youth to think for themselves. Now, we could ignore these numbers, as we're prone to do, or we could choose to analyze them. What is the meaning of all of this? Our systems are clearly failing us. Now, there are several generic reasons that are usually cited for the same, but there could be a deeper reason for it that many of us don't consider often. Our educational system was a colonial imposition, historically designed to keep us from thinking for ourselves. Even the deviser of this elaborate setup, Lord Macaulay, mentioned this in his speech to the British Parliament in 1835. Having traveled the length and breadth of the country, he felt that the people were of such high moral standing and such high caliber that the only way to break the backbone of this nation would be to replace our ancient education systems. In his own words, are we to keep the people of India ignorant in order to keep them submissive? Or shall we give them knowledge without awakening ambition? At present, it is very important that we create a class of Indian persons who are Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. Of course, we're not blaming 2 centuries worth of educational complexities on one man's intent, especially since history has a tendency to rewrite itself. But isn't it ironic how fitting this description is of so much of the Indian youth? The truth is, we're a generation in flux, a generation with confused aspirations. And even more ironically, the British have admitted to not having gotten it right. Fun fact, young Britons are actually, in the industrialized world, have one of the lowest literacy rates. 1 out of 3 don't have the basic skills to cope with everyday life. This is not an attack on British culture at all. The truth is that our history has become very relevant to who we are today. And what if we had done things differently? What if we had developed a hybrid system that took the better parts of Western education, like critical thinking, and the better parts of our own, which inculcated a strong sense of identity? Unfortunately, we did it all in reverse. What happened is we held on to our blind reverence for our educators from our Guru Shishya model of the past, and we assumed a loss of individuality, assuming the short end of the sticks on both sides, and we haven't done much about it since.
When we asked some of our peers about their schooling experiences, the volley of responses were rather disturbing. I mean, in my own experience, I struggled through school. I was pigeonholed to think differently, to learn differently, and by the end of it, I was kicked out of 2 schools because I couldn't adjust well. But what made it good was, it made me realize that if I could go through it, all other students and the youth all across the country can fight through it too. You might obviously think, why is this relevant? And this isn't new information. It isn't. But looking at the kind of...
We're a land where multiple contradictions, massive contradictions, they coexist. Here we are today in a place where...
You can pee in the public, but you can't kiss in the public. Obviously, next week you can probably even get married because it's Valentine's Day.
Where homosexuality is criminalized, but we're progressive enough to elect a trans woman as the mayor of Raigarh.
A woman can run the most powerful political party in the country, but a woman can't take a taxi back home or dress the way she wants because she's worried about being brutally brutalized.
Yeah. Where we're clearly having enough sex to be in the middle of a population explosion, but nobody wants to talk about it, much less discuss contraception at an educational level, which would be nice.
The youth movement's happening all across the country, but no mainstream media press is actually covering that.
And our politicians, of course, can freely incense riots with hate speech, but an innocent comedy group is now being legally charged for cracking immoral jokes. So these are the facts, and they are all pointing to one question. Does everything have to be so polarized? Food for thought, but here's another question. What about us in-betweeners? I think a large majority of urban Indian youth, a lot of them who might be sitting in this audience, don't fit neatly into any of these extremes. And the truth is, they deserve, to borrow from the language of Homi Bhabha, a third space. A space we need to forge for ourselves, by ourselves. And this may be applicable for millennials all over the world. I'm sure it is. But there's a reason that it's particularly vital that we get this right. Consider this. In 2020, we will be the youngest nation in the world, with our median age being 29. Fast forward 10 years into the future, in 2030, where the median person in the world is going to be an Indian. So you can do the math. We're going to have a massive global impact of unprecedented scale, but the nature of this impact, all of that comes down to how we shape our minds today. This is where critical thinking comes in. We need to bridge the gaps that our institutions have systematically stamped out. We need to equip our youth with some kind of tool that helps them, that encourages them to do so.
Now the question is, how do we do this? And what is the solution? Can we find more creative and constructive ways of changing the narrative and actually rewriting our own script? For the last 1 year, for us, starting our own online publication was an answer. And it made us realize one thing. Media is education. And the simple thing is that we need to start working towards taking the power back into our own hands and actually working towards creating a new form of education.
So the Supreme Court judgment actually stated that it is our fundamental right as citizens to impart and receive knowledge in the through the best means. This is online media. The truth is, online media is good for many other reasons as well. It's not as exclusive as print. It allows access to different mediums aside from all the information that we have access to, multiple sources of information. And the mediums are what allow us to reach out to a much wider network of people. Consider the fact that 25% of the country is illiterate. So if that's the case, imagine the power of visual narratives, photos, videos, and even audio journalism, something that's missing in this country right now. Imagine the impact of all of those things on these people. The truth is, soon all we'll need is a smartphone and access to the internet, and we all know we're well on our way to achieving that goal. So there we have it. Online cultural media as education, online cultural media as a means to make the youth start thinking more critically. With one catch. The truth is that we have to stop conceiving of cultural consumption as a Western import, because we've already seen that copy-paste methods, they just don't work when applied to our Indian context. So we've had many, many examples that we could have cited, but the honest truth is that the ones we can back up most credibly are the insights that we've had running our own publication, Homegrown, for the last year. When we started, we wanted to tell these stories from the third space. There were thousands of stories that hadn't been told, that needed to be told, and thousands of old stories that needed to be retold through a new lens. So we try to tell stories across youth culture, across all aspects of youth culture, be it politics, music, arts, social issues. No one vertical is more important than the other. The idea is to tell stories through that third lens, provide new insights, and also to catalyze further thinking from a community that continues to grow with us, regardless of whether we see eye to eye. So we pulled out a few examples of stories that not only made us think more deeply, but it also made our readers think more deeply. It encouraged critical debate, and we have a few of these examples for you today. Varun will take you.
One of the examples was Dazed and Confused by Sexuality in India. So this article got about 50,000 readers, and people were really interested in understanding what really goes on. So we went deep into the crux of the LGBT community and found out about all the issues that are faced not only within society but also within their own community. What is really interesting was that a young boy from the middle of India emailed us about the article.
So he emailed us, and what he told us actually opened our eyes to a gap that was missing in the country. He was shocked to find that a publication that he had previously visited for more frivolous interests was actually covering the topic in such a non-sensationalized manner. More importantly, it was making him question what was happening in the country. Like, he was questioning his own education, that things that have been taught to him both by family institutions as well as educational institutions. And we received so many responses that were similar. It not only opened their eyes, what we thought was regular, that we thought we could discuss openly amongst our own peers, was not the same for everyone, and there was a need for that. It encouraged critical debate. And then we have this campaign that we took upon ourselves last November. No Prison for Children was a campaign that nearly broke us. We took a very unpopular stance on a topic that I think most of the youth in the country wasn't even aware of, let alone talking about. The lowering of the juvenile justice age in the country post the horrific Nirbhaya rape incident. What we were trying to do was explain to people that we needed to have deeper debate about the issue, so that we can maybe not make a very hasty decision based on fueled by public pressure. Most of our readers were very against our viewpoint, given the passion and the outrage that there was over the incident. And it became an incredibly, incredibly lonely place for us to be on the other side of that debate. But in retrospect, no matter how difficult that time was, I think that the kind of critical debate, the rational arguments that were made, all these things, at the end of it, everyone was kicked off their high horses, and we all fell into that same third space together. That is the stuff critical thinking is made of. We were all on a new side of the debate. Then, but let's not limit ourselves to text as a medium. All of those were research stories, but what about more powerful mediums, visual mediums like photography? They have an opportunity to express critical thought without being so political, while still being far more consumable for a readership that has so much vying for its attention. This is the perfect tool for an attention deficit generation. So we have this example of Aishwarya Arumbakam's Items, and a very stunning photo narrative in which she was trying to challenge patriarchal and gender stereotypes, popularized by the Indian media, of course. So what she tried to do was, how did she do this? She took real women and she photographed them, and in the iconic costumes of item girls through decades of Indian cinema. And in the process, in the manner in which she's portrayed them, you can see it over here, every woman comes across as a strong individual who is refusing to conform to the bias that was imposed upon her. This was a turning point for us because it made us understand the power of the visual medium. It spread very far, and a lot of people had a lot of interesting things to say about it. And post that, perhaps that is what catalyzed our desire to do many more digital photo campaigns. So what we did next was this Gendered Spaces digital photo campaign in collaboration with No Country for Women. Over here, we reached out to 12 Indian photographers of reasonable repute and asked them to think about the gendered nature of spaces in India. How differently do men and women interact with space, with public spaces, with private spaces? And the responses were incredible. I don't think even we expected such a powerful response. More importantly, that narrative inspired so many of our readers to send in their own photos, their own suggestions. At the end, we had to publish all of them. There were as many as 100 to 150 responses to something that I haven't seen anyone in this country speak about before that. And so here's the truth. The other aspect to this is that it also crowdsourced opinions. It was a very important thing for us to realize in our process of developing this voice, that it's never just about one opinion, it's never just about one voice, it's about many people coming together. The third space is about encouraging dialogue. And the truth is we need multiple universes, parallel dialogues, all within this third space so that we can avoid cultural stagnation. There's no other way. And so we come full circle. Literally, Varun and I actually met outside Xavier's gates 10 years ago. But the challenges that we're talking about are not new ones, they're not easy ones. Honestly, they're just more relevant today than they ever have been before. So if we are to escape from these liminal times on an upswing together, we need to embrace our contradictions. We don't need to reject our Indianness to be progressive. We can be both. We don't have to compromise our sense of individuality to have a sense of community. We can embody both. We don't have to reject someone else's ideologies because they don't fit in with our own. There is space for both. It's called the third space. What we really do have to do is create a youth that wants to be aware, that is willing to question itself, and more importantly, willing to think critically. We are fluid, we are dynamic, we are hybrid. Accept it, believe it that there is a third space for it, and if you don't, create one of your own. Thank you.